In defence of video games. In a recent episode of the Jimquisition, Jim Sterling again charges the games industry with the most heinous of crimes. Indeed, for those watching the industry media at present, or Twitter, it may feel as if the games business is going through its own mini-version of Me Too. Before I begin, let me say that, as before, this video isn't about shaming Jim in any fashion. There are fundamental issues at stake here, and they are affecting real lives, so where disagreement is present, it must be voiced. The only diversity that really matters is diversity of thought. All else is secondary. I have no doubt that Jim earnestly believes in what he says, that he acts according to his beliefs and that he is guided by this set of ideas. It is the ideas I am here to criticise, not the single believer. Jim deals in vague, large terms with the issues, and I shall do the same, ignoring individual cases in the games industry as he does. In the games industry, accusations of abuse, assault, and various other highly charged words are currently everywhere, and some of them will be justified. These coincide, not by chance, with the social upheaval currently sweeping the Western world. Jim approaches the alleged issues in the industry from his perspective, and in a fairly open and honest video describes his own issues and battles as well. Whether the suffering of others is legitimate or not, that they feel they are suffering is a cause for concern. So Jim, I hope you feel better. The first thing to say before criticising the current movement and the video is that some of these accusations about the game industry will be real. Some will actually qualify as abuse or assault, and those should be dealt with accordingly. However, Jim's recommendation to this swath of accusations is a full external investigation into the games industry, followed by burn it all fucking down. And this is the nub of the problem. As with all belief systems, Jim's comprehension of the issue and his solutions are total. The individual cases to him form a critical mass which damns the whole industry. The veracity of any one accusation or another doesn't matter. The whole system is guilty and must be purged, because the belief system through which he sees the world deals only in totals. It is, by default, totalitarian. Jim, like many in the games journalist class, have adopted the only belief system available in the secular West, the religion of woke. Woke has its own vocabulary, its own rituals, and its own goals. It is obsessed with the notion of power and power dynamics, on upsetting hierarchies and systems, and wresting said power from whichever group they deem to have been such poor leaders. Usually the enemy is identified in identitarian terms, and in this Jim is no different. It's men in suits. He goes on to accuse the industry, yes, the entire industry, of racism, sexism, and every other ism and phobia and ist that there is. This is followed predictably by the religious chant of penance that a believer in woke will always use. They will decry their former life, their own part in said systems, will talk of growing and learning, and then of creating a space and using a platform for inclusivity, and a lot of other positivist buzzwords. What they mean by inclusivity is inclusivity of those who agree with them. All the rest is other, and the other belongs to the oppressor and must be removed. The language of religious conquest couched in psychosocial platitudes. Jim does the same. The cult of woke came for video games a long time ago, beginning with Gamergate and most recently with The Last of Us 2 being the latest battle in the culture war. Props here to Jim, by the way, for reviewing it as a game, not as a woke vehicle. He at least avoided being IGN. What woke culture has at its heart is the division of people into victims and oppressors. Victims are deserving of pity and aid. Abusers are, of course, not. There is great power in victimhood in the religion of woke. Indeed, the victim has much power in general society. When one paints oneself as a victim, then their desire for redress is about justice. It isn't envy or revenge. No, the true victim must have justice. They are, by default, just. Couple this with the believe all victims narrative and a sealed circle is created where an individual self-identifies as a victim, inheriting great power in the process, and then they must be believed and their grievances acted upon if we are to be considered just. When this is added to the second facet of the religion of woke, a pressure cooker begins. The second factor is the histrionic hypersensitivity to anything that is critical, difficult, upsetting, or limiting. When faced with any kind of obstacle or negative experience, those who see the world as an identitarian power game have only one vector of analysis: oppression or abuse. If one is unsuccessful in something, or a person does not react favourably to oneself, it is simply ever more ammunition to the argument of abuse and oppression. Indeed, if one fails regularly or does not achieve all that they wish, then these micro-crimes mount to become macro evidence of something systemic. Victimhood absolves an individual of all accountability, offers them power and immediate support. It is a seductive offer, and it feeds mostly on narcissism. And in the age of social media, narcissism is king. Rarely, but sometimes, there really will be an individual or rule unfairly blocking one's progress. This is by far the exception, and even where it is true, to continue and succeed despite that individual or rule is the true path to growth. Therefore, when facing an experience where a manager seems harsh in their feedback, or an idea we champion is met with derision rather than adoption, or we are pressured to work late or long hours, this isn't an individual experience, this is systemic, and it is abuse. Now, to stress again, there are very real accusations floating around about sexual, physical, and other forms of assault at present. that. Some of them will be true. However, some, I would argue potentially many, will not. I would wager a good number will simply be a matter of perception. This is particularly true with many of the game's influencer stories around sexual abuse. The religion of woke has become hypersensitive to the minor social discomfort caused by unwanted sexual advances. Sexual advances are a natural part of human interaction, when performed within one's social sexual norms. Largely they are verbal and without physical contact, repetition or intimidation. However, because those who are woke see these micro acts as major, they are catastrophized in the mind to become abuse. Asking someone out for drinks or even verbally seeking consent for sex is not abuse. If it violates social norms, it may be. However, the religion of woke has so subverted the sexual interplay of people that the very act of seeking consent can now be contrived as abuse. Many of the current stories in the games industry appear to be of this nature. That Jim recommends a full external examination of the industry, whatever that encompasses, whether it means all studios, publishers, resellers, stockists, retail stores, etc., I'm not sure, but suffices to say it would run a very, very wide remit indeed. And that regardless of that investigation's outcome, the answer is preordained. It is to burn it all fucking down. This speaks to the bias involved. The third vector in the woke approach to video games is fed by the second. It is the pathologization of everything and its subsequent claims of victimhood. Mental health has rightly been recognized as an important aspect of the human experience, and genuine mental trauma exists and should receive society's support. However, a generation of people raised to believe their own victimhood is supported by a plethora of new and varied psychological disorders that have recently been discovered, and then they are subsequently treated by an industry developed to treat and medicate them. The politicization of various psychological associations amongst others is a matter for another video, but the point is the same. The overdiagnosis of degrees of human behavior as disorders and their subsequent repeat custom treatment does not ultimately help anyone, including the alleged sufferer. Here, again, I must tread lightly, because if a person is in pain, it is subjective, personal, anecdotal, and difficult to measure. It is true in the sense that someone tells you that they are feeling pain and they deserve sympathy. However, the severity, proportionality, and ability to manage our own setbacks and crises has been radically reduced, because, when woke, we are excused our agency and offered only victimhood. Again, in victimhood there is great power, and having one's feelings or emotional states ascribed to a semi-permanent disorder, and near always a disorder that can be blamed on others, like parents or schools, is a permanent claim for sympathy and victimhood. In short, when we cannot control our own emotions, we seek to control other people's behaviour. Yet beneath the victim narrative is a darker drive, one that is echoed in much of the industry at present, a desire to seize the reins of power, as perceived by the alleged victim, and enact justice or right the wrong, or burn it all fucking down. Again and again, the destructive desire to seize and wield power is at the root of the professed victim. This results in revolutions, industrial, social and cultural, that have many victims and rarely turn out as the instigators desired. Ultimately, my point on the accusations currently sweeping the games industry, timed as they are to coincide with wider social movements, is this. There will be some people who are genuinely bad, that hold ill intent and act on it. There will be many who do not. Damning the whole industry after diagnosing it with systemic isms, ists and phobes is all well and good, but it isn't justice. Calm down, investigate each individual accusation for what it is, prove or disprove them, and do so according to rational standards as supported by evidence. All else is simply purging heresy and belongs in the Dark Ages. Ultimately, you will only destroy what you love.